A German soldier refused to shoot, so his commander said, "Then you stand with them." The cold grip of history often tightens around the grand narratives of conflict, painting sweeping canvases of nations clashing, ideologies warring, and the relentless march of armies. We recall the dates, the battles, the staggering casualty counts, and the monumental shifts in global power. Yet beneath the thunder of cannons and the bitter winds of propaganda, a different story unfolded. A quiet, resilient counter-narrative etched not in strategic maps, but in the fragile contours of the human heart. The Second World War, a crucible of unparalleled brutality and dehumanization, forced millions into a machinery designed to strip away empathy, to recast fellow human beings as mere targets, as the enemy. It was a period when the very concept of shared humanity seemed to buckle under the weight of hatred, when the common ground between individuals evaporated into the smoke of scorched earth. But what happens when the relentless logic of war, with its imperative to kill and conquer, collides head-on with an instinct far older and more profound, the innate capacity for compassion? What transpires in those fleeting, perilous moments when a man, clad in the uniform of an oppressor, finds himself staring not at a faceless foe, but into the eyes of another soul, vulnerable and terrified? These are the stories rarely etched into official records, whispered instead through generations, passed down as testaments to an enduring truth. They are not tales of grand heroism on the battlefield, but of a far more intimate, subversive courage. The courage to defy the prevailing tide of animosity, to choose a path less traveled, one illuminated by an inner flicker of light amidst encroaching darkness. We often imagine war as a monolithic force, homogenizing all who enter its maw into either aggressor or victim, perpetrator or liberator. This convenient simplification, however, obscures the intricate moral landscapes each individual was forced to navigate. Every soldier, regardless of their uniform, carried within them a universe of personal history, upbringing, and conscience. The choices made in the fog of war were rarely simple, often fraught with unimaginable risk, and always deeply personal. To refuse an order, to extend a hand across the chasm of hatred, was not merely an act of kindness. It was an act of profound rebellion against the very essence of the conflict, a silent shout against the deafening roar of destruction. It was an affirmation that even when the world demanded savagery, humanity could, and sometimes did, persist. This journey delves into those extraordinary instances, not to romanticize war, but to illuminate the enduring power of empathy in its most challenging environment. It seeks to understand the psychological currents that allow altruism to surface amidst terror, the ethical frameworks that guide individuals towards unexpected acts of grace, and the deep-seated human need to connect, even with those designated as adversaries. These are not isolated anomalies, but echoes of a fundamental human capacity, a testament to the resilience of the spirit that refuses to be entirely consumed by the inferno. Through these narratives, we explore the intricate dance between duty and conscience, between the crushing weight of command and the quiet voice of the soul. In the vast, brutal theater of the Eastern Front, where the snow often turned crimson and the air was thick with the scent of fear and gunpowder, a young German soldier found himself thrust into the heart of this impossible choice. The biting wind whipped across the frozen landscape, carrying with it the distant echoes of battle, a constant low thrum against the backdrop of an otherwise desolate silence. He was a conscript, barely out of his teenage years, his uniform still feeling alien on his shoulders, heavy with the weight of a war he barely understood, yet was irrevocably part of. His ordinary world had dissolved the moment he stepped onto the train, traded for the grim reality of trenches, the acrid smell of death, and the chilling camaraderie of men bound by a common, terrible purpose. Each day was a brutal lesson in survival, each night a battle against the gnawing fear that tightened in his gut. Then came the order, sharp and unyielding, cutting through the thin, cold air like a blade. It was a command that shattered the last vestiges of his inner world, a direct assault on the moral compass he had carried, perhaps unknowingly since childhood. Before him stood a group of civilians, their faces etched with a profound despair that transcended language, their eyes wide with an understanding of their impending doom. He saw not enemies, but mothers, fathers, children, fragile vessels of life, caught in the merciless gears of a conflict not of their making. The rifle felt impossibly heavy in his gloved hands, its cold steel a horrifying extension of the will of others. This was his call to adventure, not a glorious quest, but a descent into an abyss where his very soul hung in the balance. The choice was stark: comply and extinguish lives, or refuse and risk his own. The commander's voice, a whip crack of authority, demanded obedience. The soldier's breath hitched, his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the snow. His gaze swept from the terrified faces before him to the unyielding stare of his commander, a man whose eyes held the cold, detached resolve of one who had long since buried his own humanity. The air hummed with an unbearable tension, each second stretching into an eternity. This was not a moment for grand pronouncements, but for a profound internal reckoning. The soldier's fingers, numb with cold and dread, refused to obey the silent command from his own mind to raise the weapon. His body, rigid with a sudden, inexplicable defiance, became a testament to an unyielding inner truth. He could not, would not, pull the trigger. The commander, his face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and fury, stepped forward, his shadow falling over the young soldier like a shroud. The silence was broken only by the shuddering breaths of the condemned, and the faint, almost imperceptible sound of the wind whistling across the desolate plain. The commander's words, when they came, were laced with venom, a chilling pronouncement that would forever echo in the soldier's memory. Then you stand with them. The immediate aftermath of such defiance was a chilling silence, far more potent than any shouted reprimand. The young soldier, having chosen conscience over command, found himself cast into an agonizing limbo. The world, once ordered by the rigid hierarchy of military discipline, now seemed to tilt beneath his feet. His fellow soldiers, who moments before had been comrades in arms, now regarded him with a mixture of fear, bewilderment, and thinly veiled contempt. He had become an anomaly, a breach in the carefully constructed facade of collective obedience. And in the brutal calculus of war, such a deviation was unforgivable. This was his first true trial of faith, not against an external enemy, but against the crushing weight of his own unit's expectation and the inherent danger of standing apart. The internal landscape of his mind became a battlefield far more treacherous than any trench. A profound doubt began to gnaw at him, a corrosive whisper questioning the wisdom of his choice. Had he merely sealed his own fate, sacrificing himself and potentially others for a fleeting moment of moral conviction? The faces of the civilians, now receding into the distance, were replaced by the grim visages of his superiors, their judgment a palpable weight. This was the true refusal of the call, not the initial hesitation to act, but the agonizing second-guessing after the act of defiance, when the full terrifying implications began to manifest. The fear of reprisal, of being branded a traitor, of facing a firing squad himself, pressed down on him with suffocating intensity. He longed for the simpler, if brutal, clarity of following orders, wishing he could unmake the moment, yet knowing, with a deep, unsettling certainty, that he could not. Consider for a moment the immense psychological burden of such isolation. To be ostracized within a group where survival depends on absolute cohesion is to be utterly adrift. The soldier's rations tasted like ashes. His sleep was a fragmented torment, haunted by the specter of his decision. He was a pariah, bearing the invisible mark of insubordination, and the path ahead seemed to dissolve into an impenetrable fog of uncertainty. This period of acute distress served as a crucible, forging a new kind of resilience within him, one born not of physical strength but of an unyielding commitment to his internal compass, however terrifying the journey. It was during this desolate period that an unexpected figure emerged from the periphery of his existence. Not a beacon of hope in the conventional sense, but a grizzled older corporal, whose eyes held a weary wisdom that spoke of countless battles fought, both external and internal. This man, Corporal Schmidt, had observed the young soldier's silent torment with a detached yet knowing gaze. He approached not with platitudes or judgments, but with an offer of a different kind of sustenance. He shared his meager tobacco, a simple gesture, yet one laden with unspoken understanding. Schmidt spoke not of heroism, but of the quiet, enduring strength found in holding on to one's core. "The war will ask you to become many things," he murmured one frigid evening, his voice raspy, "but it cannot make you forget who you are unless you let it." This was the meeting with the mentor, a moment devoid of dramatic revelations, yet profound in its subtlety. Schmidt offered no grand escape plan, no promise of safety, but rather a vital tool, perspective. He shared tales, not of glory, but of the small, almost invisible acts of humanity he had witnessed over years of conflict, moments when the thin veil of animosity had momentarily lifted. He spoke of how the human spirit, like a tenacious weed, could find purchase even in the most barren ground, pushing through the concrete of despair. Schmidt's guidance wasn't about changing the external circumstances, but about fortifying the inner resolve. He taught the young soldier that the greatest battles were often fought not with rifles, but within the confines of one's own conscience, and that true courage lay not in the absence of fear, but in the unwavering commitment to one's fundamental decency, even when it exacted the highest cost. The immediate aftermath of his refusal had created an uneasy stalemate. He was neither punished outright nor accepted back into the fold. Instead, he existed in a liminal space, a silent judgment hanging over him, palpable in the averted gazes of his comrades. This precarious equilibrium, however, was destined to shatter. A new directive arrived, one that, while seemingly procedural, carried a chilling undertone specifically targeting those deemed unreliable. The young soldier found himself reassigned, not to a penal battalion, but to a special reconnaissance unit, tasked with deep incursions behind enemy lines, missions notorious for their high attrition rates. This was his new reality, a deliberate exile to the fringes of survival, where the icy tendrils of death were a constant, tangible companion. This shift was not merely a change of scenery, it was a radical redefinition of his existence. His prior identity as a mere cog in a vast military machine dissolved, replaced by the stark, solitary reality of a phantom, constantly hunted, constantly alert. He was no longer just a German soldier, he was a man living on borrowed time, his every breath a testament to a conscience that had refused to bend. The stakes had been irrevocably raised. His life, already precarious, now hung by the thinnest of threads, not solely from the enemy, but from the implicit understanding that his own side would not mourn his loss, perhaps even welcomed it. During one such perilous patrol, deep within the frozen heart of enemy territory, a hidden truth unfurled before him with chilling clarity. He stumbled upon not a military encampment, but a makeshift refugee shelter, crudely constructed from scavenged materials, housing women, children, and the elderly, their faces gaunt with starvation and terror. He observed, unseen, as another German patrol, not his own, swept through, not searching for combatants, but systematically plundering their meager supplies, their cruelty a stark, unvarnished display of unchecked power. This was not the war of patriotic duty and defense he had been told about. This was an abyss of predatory inhumanity, a brutal revelation that stripped away all remaining illusions. The sight hardened his resolve, transforming his initial act of defiance from a mere refusal into a profound rejection of the entire apparatus of destruction. Consequently, a pivotal decision crystallized within him. He could not, would not, continue to be even a passive participant in such barbarity. The path back to his unit, to the pretense of obedience, now felt like a betrayal of his very essence. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he could not return. He made an irrevocable commitment, a silent vow to himself, to forge a new path, however uncertain or perilous. This was his true crossing the threshold. He melted into the shadows, leaving behind his designated patrol route, his uniform, and the last vestiges of his former life. He stepped into a vast, unknown wilderness, a world of perilous freedom and existential isolation, where every step was a gamble and survival hinged not on military orders, but on an awakened moral compass. He was no longer a soldier of the Reich. He was a lone individual, a ghost seeking a different kind of salvation, a man who had chosen humanity over uniform, and in doing so, had severed all ties to the world he once knew, entering a realm from which there could be no easy return. The biting wind became a constant companion, a ceaseless whisper of impending doom against his ears as the soldier, now a solitary figure, navigated the unforgiving expanse. Each step through the snow-choked forests and across desolate plains was a precarious gamble, a testament to sheer willpower battling the relentless siege of hunger and frostbite. His uniform, once a symbol of identity, now served as a dangerous beacon, a target for anyone from either side. The physical toll was immense, but the deeper struggle resided within. The profound isolation, the gnawing realization that every decision, every breath, rested solely on his shoulders, with no command structure, no comrades, only the stark, unyielding imperative to survive. A profound ethical quandary soon presented itself, stark and undeniable, in the form of a derelict hunting cabin, its chimney cold, its windows like vacant eyes. The scent of wood smoke, however faint, hinted at recent occupancy. Inside, a meager store of dried provisions, a sack of potatoes, some cured meat, beckoned with an almost irresistible allure. His stomach screamed with deprivation, a primal urge threatening to eclipse all higher thought. The dilemma was acute: claim these necessities, knowing they might belong to someone equally desperate, perhaps a family struggling against the same brutal conditions, or continue his agonizing trek, risking collapse and certain death. This was a direct confrontation with the very foundation of his earlier defiance. Could he maintain his integrity when his own existence hung in the balance? Or would survival demand a compromise of the values he had chosen to uphold? Ultimately, he took only what was absolutely essential, leaving a hastily carved mark on the wooden table, a silent acknowledgement of a debt he hoped one day to repay, a fragile anchor to his own humanity. This act, however small, became a reaffirmation, a subtle strengthening of his resolve. Further along his perilous journey, a flicker of unexpected support emerged from the most unlikely quarter. He encountered an elderly woman, her face a roadmap of hardship, tending a solitary flock of sheep near a bombed-out village. Despite her initial suspicion, an ancient shared understanding passed between them, a recognition of mutual vulnerability. She offered him a crust of bread and a sip of warm herbal tea, not out of allegiance, but from a deeper, more elemental compassion, a fleeting connection that transcended the uniforms and the warring nations. This ephemeral alliance, born of shared suffering, underscored the notion that true empathy often blossoms in the barren fields of despair. Yet the landscape remained fraught with peril, constantly testing his vigilance and his moral boundaries. One frigid afternoon, while seeking shelter in a dense thicket, he narrowly avoided a patrol, not of his former countrymen, but of enemy soldiers. Their faces, hardened by the same relentless conflict, were not expressions of pure malice, but of exhaustion, fear, and a grim determination. He watched them pass, his breath held captive in his lungs, realizing that his enemies were not monolithic monsters, but men caught in the same grinding machinery of war. This observation presented a nuanced challenge. How could he maintain his belief in universal human dignity when confronted with individuals who, through circumstance, were compelled to act as adversaries and whose own survival might depend on his demise? His commitment to non-aggression was tested. He possessed a rifle, a relic of his past, but raising it now against these weary figures felt like a betrayal of his chosen path. Consequently, each passing day reinforced the profound erosion of clear-cut morality. The world he now inhabited was a canvas painted in shades of gray, where every choice, from foraging for food to evading capture, was imbued with ethical complexities. He was learning that the greatest challenges to his values did not always come from overt evil, but from the insidious pressures of self-preservation, from the constant threat of annihilation that blurred the lines between right and wrong. The fragility of his core values was relentlessly exposed, a delicate flame flickering in the harsh winds of war, demanding an unwavering daily commitment to keep it from being extinguished entirely. His journey was becoming less about escaping a physical threat, and more about safeguarding the integrity of his own soul. The chilling narrative of his existence, once a solitary struggle for survival, now converged towards a singular, inescapable point. His path led him to a secluded ravine, a natural amphitheater of snow and rock, where a grim tableau was unfolding. This was the inmost cave, not a physical fortress, but a psychological stronghold of despair, where the very soul of humanity was under siege. A small group of villagers, huddled together, their faces a canvas of terror, stood before a firing squad. These were not his former comrades, nor clearly identifiable enemy soldiers, but men whose uniforms spoke of a detached, brutal authority, their faces devoid of all empathy. The air was thick with a dreadful silence, punctuated only by the ragged breaths of the condemned and the metallic click of rifles. An unbearable suspense tightened its grip around him. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a drumbeat of dread and urgency. He was merely an observer, hidden in the craggy overhangs, yet the scene before him pulled him into its vortex with an irresistible force. The mentor's quiet wisdom, the image of the plundered refugees, the profound isolation that had honed his conscience, all converged into this single agonizing moment. He understood, with a clarity that pierced through his fear, that his journey had led him here for a purpose far grander than mere self-preservation. He could remain hidden, a silent witness, and perhaps survive. Conversely, to intervene meant almost certain death, a direct collision with the brutal machinery he had so vehemently rejected. This was the ordeal, the central crisis that would define him. His ultimate fear was not death itself, but the death of his own humanity, the silent complicity that would forever stain his soul. He saw a child, no older than his own younger sister, clutching a tattered doll, her eyes wide with uncomprehending terror. In that instant, the abstract concept of war dissolved into the tangible reality of innocent lives about to be extinguished. A profound transformation swept through him, shedding the last vestiges of fear for his own skin. He was no longer merely a man trying to survive. He was a shield, a conduit for the compassion he had fiercely guarded. With a guttural cry, born of desperation and an unyielding will, he launched himself from his hiding place, not with a weapon raised, but with a desperate, disorienting diversion. He threw a large rock down the slope, creating a sudden, echoing clatter that drew the immediate, bewildered attention of the firing squad. The unexpected disturbance, amplified by the confined space, caused a momentary disarray, a precious sliver of time. This was his difficult choice, his sacrifice, to draw their fire, to become the primary target, to exchange his life for the hope of theirs. The ensuing chaos was deafening. Shots rang out, splintering against the rock face where he had been, now where he was running. He wasn't fighting. He was creating a diversion, a living, moving target. The villagers, jolted by the sudden shift in focus, instinctively scattered, their flight a desperate scramble for freedom. He had bought them precious seconds, perhaps minutes. His actions, born of a deep-seated empathy, directly countered the dehumanizing logic of the war. He felt a searing pain, a sharp blow that sent him stumbling. But the sight of the villagers disappearing into the snowy tree line provided an unexpected surge of strength, a profound affirmation. This was the reward, the seizing of the sword, not a material prize, but an internal victory of unparalleled magnitude. He had faced his ultimate challenge, the confrontation between his deepest values and the brutal reality of his world, and he had emerged, not unscathed, but undeniably transformed. He had chosen life over death, compassion over indifference, and in doing so, had reclaimed a piece of his own soul, solidifying his identity as a man who would not yield to the darkness. The pain was immense, but so too was the profound sense of purpose, of a hard-won triumph that resonated deep within his core, a testament to the enduring power of a single defiant act of humanity. His growth was complete, forged in the crucible of sacrifice, leaving him irrevocably changed, a vessel through which the light of empathy had undeniably shone. The subsequent days unfolded not as a triumphant return, but as a silent, arduous pilgrimage through a world irrevocably altered. The soldier, now a ghost in his own skin, carried the indelible mark of his choice, a brand etched deep within his psyche. The physical wounds, though painful, were transient. The deeper lacerations were those inflicted upon his understanding of existence itself. He found himself adrift in a moral landscape far more complex than any battlefield map, where the stark lines of right and wrong, once so clear in the moment of crisis, blurred into an unsettling continuum of human frailty and resilience. This period was not about escape from danger, but about the profound internal reckoning with the cost of compassion and the burden of witnessing humanity at its most brutal and its most luminous. A subtle yet pervasive change manifested in his perception of the world. He observed the remnants of war-torn landscapes with a new, almost hyper-aware sensitivity, seeing not just rubble and desolation, but the shattered dreams and fractured lives that lay beneath. The cacophony of distant shelling, once a source of terror, now resonated with a hollow echo of futility, a testament to the cyclical nature of conflict. His senses, honed by relentless peril, remained acutely attuned to the subtle shifts in atmosphere, the unspoken anxieties of those he encountered, and the profound, often hidden reserves of kindness that could still be found in the most unexpected places. This heightened awareness, while a shield against renewed threat, also made the ordinary world seem jarringly superficial, a stark contrast to the existential depths he had plumbed. Furthermore, the very concept of peace, when he eventually found it, proved to be an elusive and multifaceted challenge. It was not merely the absence of gunfire, but a profound internal reconstruction. He grappled with the paradox of having found a profound sense of purpose amidst destruction, and the subsequent struggle to articulate that purpose in a world that had not shared his crucible. The quiet moments once yearned for now often brought a torrent of memories, a kaleidoscope of faces and impossible decisions that replayed with vivid, unrelenting clarity. This internal landscape was his enduring battlefield, where the echoes of past events continued to shape his present reality, demanding a constant, quiet strength. Consider for a moment the profound isolation that accompanies such unique experiences. How does one convey the weight of a moment where life and death hung on a single defiant act to those who have only known the mundane rhythms of civilian life? He learned that true understanding often transcended words, residing instead in shared glances, in the unspoken recognition between individuals who had glimpsed the raw, unvarnished core of the human spirit. Consequently, he found himself drawn to quiet pursuits, to acts of rebuilding, however small, that mirrored his internal quest for restoration. He might have helped a farmer mend a fence, or offered a comforting presence to a grieving widow, finding solace not in grand gestures, but in the simple, tangible acts of mending a broken world, one thread at a time. Another crucial layer to his transformation was the evolution of his understanding of courage. It was no longer about charging into battle or facing down an enemy with a weapon. Instead, it became the quiet, persistent bravery of living with his choices, of carrying the weight of his experiences without succumbing to cynicism or despair. It was the courage to believe in the inherent goodness of humanity, even after witnessing its darkest manifestations. The road back, therefore, was not a return to an old self, but a continuous forging of a new one, shaped by indelible scars and fortified by an unshakable conviction. His journey underscored the enduring truth that growth is not a finite destination, but an ongoing process, a continuous navigation through the intricate tapestry of memory and hope, where the persistence of struggle often reveals the deepest wellsprings of the human spirit. Years after the last echoes of artillery faded into the silence of memory, the soldier, now simply a man, cultivated a life rooted in quiet purpose. He had not sought accolades nor public recognition for his singular act of defiance. Instead, he channeled the profound lessons learned in the crucible of conflict into the humble rhythm of daily existence, finding solace in the tangible acts of creation rather than destruction. However, the journey of transformation, for souls so deeply touched by extremity, often requires a final, symbolic affirmation, a moment where the newly forged self is tested not by external threat, but by the insidious specter of forgotten principles. This ultimate trial, a resurrection of spirit, awaited him not in a new battle, but in the quiet challenge of persistent memory. This pivotal moment arrived decades later, when the scars of war had softened but not vanished, and the world began to grapple with its own historical reckoning. He found himself in a town hall, a gathering convened to honor local veterans, a stage where the narratives of valor often overshadowed the complexities of conscience. As the speeches droned on, a voice from the audience, sharp and accusatory, challenged the very notion of shared humanity during the war, casting all former adversaries into an undifferentiated shadow of malevolence. For a fleeting instant, the old world, with its rigid divisions and dehumanizing rhetoric, seemed to reassert its grip. Yet the man, though his heart stirred with a familiar ache, felt no trace of the old fear or doubt. He rose slowly, his gaze steady, and without rancor. He spoke not of his own deed, but of the universal capacity for kindness he had witnessed, even in the darkest corners. His words, measured and imbued with an unshakable conviction, offered a testament to the enduring light of empathy, a quiet refutation of generalized hatred. This was his final, profound test, a demonstration that his transformation was complete, his spirit unyielding, and his commitment to human dignity absolute. From this deep wellspring of experience, he brought forth a unique elixir to his world. It was not a potion, nor a tangible treasure, but an intangible gift, the quiet, unwavering presence of a man who had stared into the abyss and chosen light. His very being became a living testament to the possibility of moral courage, a silent curriculum for those around him. The essence of his journey, though rarely recounted in detail, permeated his interactions, influencing those who knew him with an almost imperceptible grace. He became a conduit for understanding, a subtle bridge between fractured pasts and hopeful futures. Consequently, his influence rippled outward, transforming the mundane fabric of his community in profound yet understated ways. Neighbors, observing his unwavering integrity and gentle wisdom, found themselves nudged towards greater compassion in their own lives, perhaps resolving long-standing feuds or extending unexpected kindnesses to strangers. His steadfastness, forged in the fires of impossible choice, became a quiet anchor for others navigating their own, albeit smaller, moral dilemmas. It demonstrated that acts of profound humanity, even when seemingly isolated, possess an inherent power to propagate, like unseen currents beneath the surface of a tranquil sea, shaping the landscape in unforeseen ways. Indeed, the legacy of such a life transcends the individual, weaving itself into the broader tapestry of human resilience. It offers an enduring counter-narrative to the prevailing tales of conflict, reminding us that even amidst the most profound societal fractures, the intrinsic human capacity for empathy remains a potent force. Now, consider how this applies when you face moments where the prevailing narrative demands conformity, where the easy path is to dehumanize or to remain silent. The enduring echo of that soldier's choice serves as a powerful beacon, illuminating the pathway towards a more compassionate existence, proving that individual moral fortitude is not merely a personal virtue, but a vital contribution to the collective human spirit. Ultimately, the man's journey underscores a timeless truth. The most profound victories are often not won on grand battlefields, but in the quiet chambers of the human heart. His life became a living parable, an affirmation that the spirit of kindness, once chosen, can root itself so deeply that it withstands the fiercest storms, leaving an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. This enduring impact, a testament to the transformative power of a single principled act, continues to resonate through generations, a quiet assurance that even when the world demands savagery, humanity can, and often does, persist. Beyond the individual sagas of moral courage, a deeper inquiry emerges. What fundamental human mechanisms enable such profound acts of empathy to surface amidst the dehumanizing machinery of war? These aren't mere anomalies, but rather powerful testaments to an intrinsic psychological architecture that, even under extreme duress, resists complete suppression. Neuroscientific research exploring the intricate circuitry of compassion suggests that our brains are hardwired for connection, possessing mirror neurons that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe another doing so, fostering a rudimentary understanding of their experience. This innate capacity for resonance, though often overridden by propaganda and systemic pressure, can ignite in moments of unexpected vulnerability, revealing a shared humanity that transcends the manufactured divisions of conflict. The very construct of enemy is a fragile edifice, painstakingly built through relentless indoctrination and fear-mongering. Its purpose is to strip away individual identity, reducing complex human beings to abstract threats, thereby justifying violence. Yet, the spontaneous acts of kindness we observe during wartime expose the inherent brittleness of this construct. When a soldier, trained to perceive an adversary as subhuman, encounters that same individual in a moment of shared suffering, perhaps both shivering from the same biting cold, or sharing a fleeting glance across a no-man's land, the ideological barriers can momentarily crumble. This is where the profound power of such gestures lies. They are not just acts of personal virtue, but subversive assaults on the very logic of war, challenging the core premise that some lives are inherently less valuable than others. Consider the pervasive psychological toll exacted by maintaining a state of perpetual hatred and suspicion. Such a stance demands an immense emotional expenditure, a constant vigilance against the natural inclination towards fellow feeling. Conversely, the release of empathy, even in a fleeting moment, can offer a profound, albeit dangerous, psychological catharsis. It is a reassertion of one's own humanity, a defiant whisper against the roaring chorus of animosity. These instances often arise from an unexpected shared experience, a commonality discovered in the depths of despair, perhaps a wounded foe crying out for a mother, or a shared glance at a photograph of loved ones, suddenly bridging an otherwise uncrossable chasm. Moreover, the ripple effects of such acts, though often unrecorded in official histories, undoubtedly permeated the fabric of military life in subtle, yet significant ways. A story whispered from one trench to another, a brief moment of unexpected mercy witnessed by a comrade, could plant a seed of doubt, a flicker of questioning within others. While not leading to widespread rebellion, such narratives chipped away at the monolithic certainty of the conflict, introducing a vital, subversive element of moral ambiguity. They served as quiet reminders that the uniforms and flags did not entirely define the individual within, suggesting that even in the most rigid of systems, personal conscience retained a potent, albeit often suppressed, voice. Now, consider how this applies when you face situations where groupthink pressures you to adopt a dehumanizing stance towards others, whether in personal interactions or broader societal discourse. The historical examples from wartime offer a stark illustration. The choice to extend empathy, even at great personal risk, is a powerful act of self-preservation, safeguarding one's own moral integrity. It underscores that human connection, however brief or fraught, can be a profound source of resilience, not just for the recipient, but for the giver, reaffirming the enduring capacity for good, even when circumstances demand its opposite. Therefore, these historical moments are not merely quaint anecdotes from a bygone era. They are vital insights into the enduring strength of the human spirit. They demonstrate that while systems can be designed to extinguish compassion, the flame of humanity, once lit, can prove remarkably resilient. It is a continuous, quiet battle against the forces that seek to divide and dehumanize, a testament to the fact that the most profound acts of courage often involve the simple, yet revolutionary decision to see another suffering as one's own. Beyond the inherent psychological wiring that predisposes human beings to connection, the crucible of conflict often forged empathy through the stark, undeniable recognition of shared vulnerability. This phenomenon frequently arose not from a calculated moral stance but from an almost instinctual response to circumstances that stripped away the uniforms and revealed the common fragility of life. It was in moments when the external threat transcended national allegiances, a brutal winter storm, a devastating bombing raid indiscriminately affecting both sides, or the shared agony of hunger, that the artificial barriers separating us from them sometimes dissolved. For instance, consider the quiet, unspoken truce that occasionally emerged during a relentless aerial bombardment. Soldiers from opposing trenches, pinned down by the same raining destruction, might find themselves momentarily united, not by a common cause, but by a common terror, the primal fear of annihilation, the desperate scramble for cover, the shared helplessness in the face of overwhelming power. These experiences could momentarily eclipse the deep-seated animosity. In such fleeting instances, a nod of grim understanding, a shared gasp, or even a moment of silent mutual aid in the face of a collapsing dugout became a profound, if temporary, affirmation of a deeper, pre-military bond. These were not acts of strategic alliance, but spontaneous recognitions of fellow beings trapped in a mutual existential horror. Furthermore, mundane objects, seemingly insignificant amidst the grand theater of war, often served as unexpected bridges across the chasm of hatred. A soldier, sifting through the debris of a shelled village, might discover a child's wooden toy, a worn photograph of a family picnic, or a meticulously embroidered handkerchief. Such artifacts, imbued with the quiet resonance of civilian life, could instantly transform the abstract concept of the enemy populace into a tangible reminder of shared human experience, of love, loss, and the simple desire for peace. The sight of a familiar family heirloom, perhaps similar to one cherished in his own home, could momentarily disarm the ingrained animosity, revealing a common thread of domesticity and aspiration that transcended the brutality of the present. Consequently, these acts of empathy, however small or isolated, were not merely expressions of personal sentiment. They represented a potent form of ethical resistance against the pervasive ideological machinery of war. They were choices to affirm a universal right to dignity, irrespective of uniform or nationality, a refusal to allow the conflict's dehumanizing logic to fully penetrate one's core being. This was not about political dissent or military insubordination in the traditional sense, but a deeper, more fundamental safeguarding of one's moral compass. It was a conscious or unconscious decision to protect the integrity of one's own soul, to prevent the internal landscape from being entirely consumed by the external inferno of hatred. Another crucial layer to understanding these gestures involves recognizing them as a form of banal goodness. Unlike grand cinematic acts of heroism, many moments of wartime compassion were subtle, almost imperceptible. A shared cigarette, a furtive exchange of water, a whispered warning. These small, often anonymous acts collectively chipped away at the monolithic darkness, demonstrating that profound human decency could persist without fanfare or expectation of reward. They were quiet affirmations that even when the world demanded savagery, the capacity for simple human kindness could still find expression, a testament to the resilient, almost stubborn, persistence of grace. Now, consider how this applies when you face situations where the prevailing narrative demands a rigid categorization of others, where the easy path is to dismiss or demonize those who differ from you. The wartime examples underscore the power of seeking out shared vulnerabilities, of recognizing the common threads of human experience that lie beneath the surface of division. They challenge us to look beyond the labels in the uniforms, to find the child's toy, the family photograph, or the shared moment of fear that can bridge seemingly uncrossable divides, affirming the profound truth that humanity is a tapestry far more intricate and interconnected than any conflict can tear asunder. Yet, the tapestry of human connection in wartime extended beyond the battlefield's immediate exigencies, finding expression in spheres governed by different codes of conduct. Consider the medical profession, a realm where an ancient oath often transcended the transient allegiances of nations. Field hospitals, whether hastily erected tents or commandeered schoolhouses, occasionally became sanctuaries where the universal imperative to preserve life superseded the brutal logic of conflict. Here, the wounded from all sides sometimes lay side by side, their injuries demanding an impartial response. A German surgeon might find himself operating on an Allied soldier, his hands guided not by political ideology, but by the intricate anatomy of the human body and the singular desire to staunch the flow of life. This particular brand of compassion, rooted in professional ethics, presented a distinct challenge to the war's inherent dehumanization. It underscored a profound truth, that certain human endeavors, by their very nature, demand a perspective larger than nationalistic fervor. The shared language of pain, the universal vulnerability of a body ravaged by shrapnel or disease, often compelled medical personnel to see beyond the uniform to the suffering individual beneath. The Hippocratic Oath, or its functional equivalent in any medical tradition, became a silent yet powerful counter-narrative, a testament to a collective human responsibility that persisted even when the world descended into madness. Consequently, these acts of healing, performed across enemy lines, were not merely physical interventions. They were profound reaffirmations of a shared humanity, quiet declarations that some lives, regardless of affiliation, held intrinsic value. Furthermore, the very act of extending compassion, even to an enemy, could paradoxically serve as a vital lifeline for the giver's own psychological well-being. In environments designed to cultivate callousness and desensitize individuals to suffering, moments of intentional kindness could act as powerful antidotes, preserving a fragile sense of self and moral integrity. The internal landscape of a soldier, constantly bombarded by brutality, risks becoming barren and devoid of empathy. However, a deliberate choice to offer aid, to alleviate pain, or to speak a comforting word, even to someone designated as an adversary, could become an anchoring act, a defiant assertion of one's own humanity in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform to savagery. This wasn't merely about altruism. It was, in a profound sense, about self-preservation, a way to prevent one's own soul from becoming another casualty of war. Building on this, the quiet defiance of local populations often provided another layer of unexpected compassion. Civilians, caught between warring factions, faced unimaginable risks. Yet, stories persist of villagers, at great peril to themselves, offering shelter, food, or medical attention to wounded soldiers from the enemy side. These were not acts of political allegiance, but rather instinctive responses rooted in a fundamental human decency, a refusal to allow the abstract concept of war to override the immediate, tangible needs of a suffering individual. A farmer's wife, discovering a shivering wounded soldier in her barn, might see not a uniform but a son, a brother, a fellow human being in distress, and choose to act from a place of simple, unvarnished empathy, defying the harsh dictates of occupation and conflict. Now consider how this applies when you encounter situations where society, or even your immediate circle, pressures you to adopt a stance of rigid partisanship or to withhold compassion from those deemed other. The wartime examples illuminate the profound courage required to uphold universal values when it is most difficult and most dangerous. They underscore that empathy is not merely a passive feeling, but an active, often subversive choice, a powerful force capable of piercing through the thickest veils of animosity. These acts, whether from a surgeon's scalpel, a soldier's quiet moment of mercy, or a civilian's clandestine aid, collectively form a testament to the enduring, almost stubborn persistence of human goodness, proving that the spirit of kindness, once kindled, can illuminate even the darkest corners of conflict. The quiet dignity of his later years, far removed from the brutal theater of conflict, became the stage for his ultimate spiritual reckoning. He had rebuilt his life, not with grand gestures, but with the steady hands of a craftsman, each day a testament to resilience. Yet the war's indelible shadows occasionally stretched across even the most sunlit paths. A final, symbolic test awaited him. Not a physical ordeal, but a profound challenge to the very essence of the hope he had so fiercely cultivated. This occurred in the form of a young man, a distant relative perhaps, consumed by a fierce cynicism born of a later, smaller conflict, railing against the futility of human goodness, convinced that self-interest was the sole driving force of existence. The elder man listened, his eyes holding the vast, quiet depth of oceans, neither judging nor dismissing the young man's pain. This was his resurrection, the moment he demonstrated his complete and unwavering transformation, not by speaking of his past, but by embodying its hard-won lessons, offering a living counter-argument to despair through his sheer, unyielding presence. He chose not to argue, but to simply be a testament to enduring compassion, proving that the human spirit, when truly refined, can absorb the deepest wounds without succumbing to bitterness. Crucially, however, the elixir he brought back to the ordinary world was not a story to be told, for his experiences were too sacred, too personal for casual recounting. Instead, it was the palpable aura of profound peace and unwavering grace that emanated from him. This gift, subtle yet potent, manifested as a quiet strength, a deep wellspring of understanding that seemed to soothe troubled souls without a single word being exchanged. It was the wisdom gleaned from having faced humanity's nadir and choosing its zenith, a spiritual alchemy that transformed his past suffering into a source of quiet illumination for others. His presence alone possessed a unique ability to inspire introspection, to gently nudge individuals toward their own reservoirs of empathy, revealing the dormant potential for kindness within them. Moreover, this unique form of wisdom did not demand adherence to any doctrine. Rather, it fostered an environment where reconciliation and forgiveness could subtly take root. People sought his counsel not for specific advice, but for the profound calm he exuded, finding in his silent empathy a mirror for their own capacity for healing. His life became a living testament to the possibility of redemption, a quiet defiance against the notion that trauma must inevitably lead to perpetual bitterness or vengeance. He demonstrated that true strength lay not in forgetting, but in integrating the past's lessons into a framework of enduring compassion, allowing the wounds to become sources of profound, rather than destructive, insight. Consequently, his very existence became an unspoken invitation for others to cultivate their own inner gardens of peace. Individuals observing his serenity, his unwavering belief in the inherent dignity of every person, were often prompted to reevaluate their own biases, to extend small acts of kindness they might otherwise have withheld. This profound influence rippled outward, not through dramatic pronouncements, but through the cumulative effect of countless subtle interactions, each one a testament to the transformative power of a truly compassionate heart. He became a silent architect of community, fostering an atmosphere where understanding superseded judgment and shared humanity became the most cherished currency. Beyond individual encounters, the enduring narrative of his life, though largely unwritten, wove itself into the collective consciousness of his locale. It served as a potent, whispered truth that even in the darkest trenches of human history, a light can not only survive but can also return to illuminate the path for future generations. His journey underscored the philosophical depth of choosing courage over conformity, demonstrating that such choices are not merely personal acts but vital contributions to the moral fabric of the world. This profound legacy taught that the true measure of a life is not in the battles won, but in the humanity preserved and propagated. Now consider how this applies when you face moments where the prevailing cultural currents seem to celebrate cynicism or dismiss the power of individual moral choice. His life stands as a powerful testament, an enduring beacon, proving that the quiet, unwavering commitment to empathy can indeed transform the world, one gentle ripple at a time. Such a life, therefore, culminates not in an ending, but in a continuous, transcendent echo of humanity's better angels. A perpetual reminder that kindness, while it may not end wars, will forever outlast them, leaving an indelible imprint on the very soul of existence. The intricate architecture of warfare, meticulously designed to dismantle human connection, often underestimated the tenacious roots of pre-conflict identity. Military doctrines, across all nations, systematically sought to eradicate the natural inclination towards empathy for the designated enemy, actively discouraging fraternization through stern warnings and severe penalties. This deliberate conditioning aimed to transform individuals into instruments of a collective will, where the abstract concept of the other superseded any individual's inherent humanity. Yet, despite these stringent measures, the deeply embedded values and memories from a life before the uniform frequently served as an internal compass, guiding actions that defied official mandates and resonated with a forgotten decency. Indeed, it was in the unexpected resurfacing of shared cultural touchstones that these artificial barriers sometimes proved most fragile. Imagine a German soldier resting in a captured farmhouse, discovering a worn book of Rilke poetry, or perhaps hearing a familiar melody from a classical composer drifting from an enemy camp. These moments, seemingly trivial amidst the brutality, could trigger a profound recognition of shared heritage, a reminder that the opposing side was not a monolithic, faceless entity, but comprised individuals whose inner lives might have been shaped by similar artistic or intellectual currents. Such an encounter could momentarily pierce the veil of animosity, fostering a fleeting, almost subversive sense of commonality that transcended the immediate animosity of the battlefield. Conversely, the simple unspoken language of gestures often bridged divides where words or even shared culture failed. A brief, almost imperceptible nod of understanding between sentries on a bitterly cold night, or the silent exchange of a scavenged cigarette with a prisoner, could convey a universe of shared suffering and mutual recognition. These were not acts of strategic importance but micro-expressions of humanity, fleeting acknowledgments that beneath the uniforms and ideological differences, two beings endured the same harsh realities. Such nonverbal communication, stripped of political rhetoric, often spoke volumes, demonstrating a primal human capacity to connect through shared experience, even in the absence of explicit accord. Furthermore, the very act of extending such unbidden kindness, even in the face of strict prohibition, served as a crucial bulwark against the moral corrosion inherent in sustained conflict. To maintain one's capacity for empathy, to consciously choose a moment of grace, could be a powerful act of internal preservation, safeguarding the soul from the desensitizing effects of violence. It was a defiant assertion of personal autonomy, a refusal to allow the external brutality to entirely dictate the internal moral landscape. This wasn't merely about the welfare of the recipient. It was also profoundly about protecting the giver's own moral core, preventing it from hardening into an unfeeling shell. Another crucial layer to these phenomena involves the profound influence of childhood memories and familial bonds. A soldier, confronted with a wounded enemy, might recall the face of a younger sibling or a parent's gentle teaching about compassion. These deeply ingrained personal narratives, often dormant under the pressure of military indoctrination, could suddenly resurface with overwhelming force, overriding the learned impulse to dehumanize. The memory of a loved one's specific kindness, or a lesson about inherent human worth, could become the decisive factor in a moment of crisis, compelling an act of mercy that defied all military logic. Now, consider how this applies when you face situations where societal pressures or group affiliations demand a rigid adherence to preconceived notions about others, particularly those deemed outsiders or opponents. The wartime instances illustrate that true strength often lies not in conforming to collective hatred, but in remembering and upholding the fundamental human values instilled long before such divisions were manufactured. They remind us that the most potent acts of defiance can be the quietest ones, those that reaffirm our shared humanity in the face of overwhelming pressure to deny it, demonstrating that empathy remains a resilient force, capable of piercing through the thickest veils of animosity. Reflecting on this profound odyssey, one discerns a consistent, unwavering truth that resonates beneath the cacophony of conflict. The initial wrenching from an accustomed existence, the sudden imposition of an impossible moral calculus, reveals not only the fragility of personal peace, but also the latent, often surprising strength of an inner compass. It is within these moments of profound disruption that the individual spirit, stripped of its protective layers, confronts the stark choice between acquiescence and an arduous, solitary defiance. This confrontation, though born of terror, simultaneously ignites a dormant resilience, forging a resolve that transcends mere physical endurance, rooting itself in an unwavering commitment to one's intrinsic values. Drawing these disparate threads together, we witness how the very act of choosing conscience, even when fraught with peril and isolation, initiates an irreversible metamorphosis. The subsequent journey, marked by gnawing self-doubt and the chilling prospect of retribution, paradoxically hones a deeper understanding of one's own moral architecture. The subtle guidance from unexpected sources, or the quiet recognition of shared humanity in the most desolate circumstances, serves not as an escape, but as a vital reinforcement for the spirit. It underscores that true fortitude often blossoms not in the absence of fear, but in the unwavering commitment to a principled path, even when that path leads through a wilderness of uncertainty and profound ethical dilemmas. As we chart this intricate human terrain, it becomes increasingly clear that the most profound challenges to one's core beliefs arise not solely from overt malice, but from the insidious pressures of self-preservation and the pervasive dehumanization inherent in conflict. Yet, it is precisely in these crucible moments, the agonizing choice to protect the vulnerable, the deliberate act of non-aggression towards a weary adversary, or the quiet defiance of a destructive command, that identity is not only preserved, but profoundly redefined. The individual, having faced the abyss of their own potential complicity, emerges not merely as a survivor, but as a testament to the enduring power of compassion, their very being a living repudiation of the war's cynical logic. This transformation, catalyzed by sacrifice, imprints an indelible mark, shaping perception and fostering a nuanced empathy for the multifaceted nature of human experience. This journey, therefore, illuminates a profound truth. The echoes of such courage reverberate far beyond the initial act, subtly weaving themselves into the fabric of a world yearning for repair. The process of returning, or rather, of forging a new existence, is not a simple retreat to normalcy, but a continuous reconstruction, where the scars of experience become sources of profound wisdom. The hard-won lessons, embodied rather than merely articulated, radiate an intangible grace, influencing others not through grand pronouncements, but through the quiet power of an integrity fiercely defended. It is through these lives, lived with an unwavering commitment to humanity's better angels, that the seeds of reconciliation and understanding are sown, creating ripples that gently reshape the collective consciousness. As we approach the culmination of these reflections, we are invited to consider the enduring legacy of such profound choices and the lasting impact they have on the very essence of our shared human story. The deep currents of humanity, often obscured by the tumultuous waves of conflict, reveal themselves in moments of profound, unexpected grace. Our journey through these historical echoes has unveiled a truth far more intricate than the stark narratives of victory and defeat, that even when the world demands savagery, the intrinsic human capacity for empathy persists, a resilient flicker against encroaching darkness. These are not merely isolated anecdotes of wartime benevolence, but rather profound affirmations of a universal moral architecture, deeply embedded within the human spirit, which refuses to be entirely extinguished by the fires of hatred and dehumanization. What emerges from these compelling accounts is a powerful testament to the transformative power of individual choice. It is the story of an inner compass, often silenced by external pressures, yet capable of guiding a soul toward an act of profound courage. Not the courage of the battlefield, but the more subversive bravery of defying an order that violates one's deepest ethical convictions. This choice, born of terror and fraught with unimaginable risk, initiates an irreversible metamorphosis. It strips away the illusion of a clear-cut enemy, replacing it with the vulnerable, shared reality of human existence, underscoring that the greatest battles are often fought within the confines of one's own conscience. The path forward, once chosen, becomes a crucible, refining the spirit and solidifying an unwavering commitment to dignity. The ripple effect of such principled actions extends far beyond the immediate moment, leaving an indelible imprint not only on the recipients of kindness, but perhaps even more profoundly on the giver. To choose compassion in the face of mandated cruelty is to safeguard one's own humanity, to prevent the soul from becoming another casualty of war. This act of internal preservation allows the individual to return, not unchanged, but fundamentally transformed, carrying a hard-won wisdom that transcends mere survival. This elixir, this quiet strength and profound understanding, becomes a subtle yet powerful gift to the ordinary world, fostering an environment where reconciliation can tentatively bloom and where the seeds of future empathy are gently sown. These historical narratives, therefore, are not confined to the past. They serve as a timeless mirror reflecting our own contemporary challenges. In a world still grappling with divisions, with the persistent temptation to categorize and dehumanize, the lessons gleaned from these wartime acts of grace offer a vital framework for navigating modern complexities. They remind us that the constructed barriers between people, whether based on ideology, nationality, or any other superficial distinction, are ultimately fragile. The true practice of humanity begins now, in our daily lives, in the small, deliberate choices we make to extend understanding, to bridge divides, and to recognize the shared vulnerability that binds us all. Ultimately, the enduring legacy of these moments is a defiant message of hope. It is an affirmation that while the machinery of conflict may seek to crush the human spirit, it can never fully extinguish its inherent capacity for good. The light of compassion, once kindled, possesses an extraordinary resilience, capable of piercing through the thickest veils of animosity and illuminating the path towards a more humane future. It stands as a perpetual reminder that kindness, in its most profound and courageous forms, may not end wars, but it most certainly survives them, leaving an indelible, resonant echo across the vast expanse of human history, inspiring us to uphold that light in